Right. Well, former President Thabo Mbeki has blasted the African National Congress in a letter he wrote to the governing party. In the 17-page document, Mbeki questions the ANC's decision to use its majority in parliament to vote against any investigations into the Phala Phala saga. Well, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the NEC will meet with the former president to discuss the contents of the letter. Joining me now, though, to further unpack this is political analyst Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Dr. Vilakazi, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on our platform this morning. The former president has been pretty consistent in his criticism, at least, of President Cyril Ramaphosa, scathing about Ramaphosa's leadership or lack thereof when it comes to issues around poverty and unemployment. So are we at all surprised that he would, pretty much be a dog with a bone on this issue of Phala Phala as well?
Good morning, and to viewers at home. Thank you for inviting me. It is not a surprise at all. It is a known factor on the public domain that the relationship between former President Thabo Mbeki and President incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa, our honorable, is not a good one. And it is not surprising that former President Thabo Mbeki would probably be a critique of this administration under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa. So that's a non-fact. It is not surprising at all. And it's a whole thing, that is culture in the African National Congress that since 1994, except President Nelson Mandela, there is no president that has finished, his term. And I think questions are probably, being asked even by former presidents to say, why would this one be different? I'm not sure if that is what is pushing former President Thabo Mbeki to do this, but I also want to believe that in terms of reality check, former President Thabo Mbeki may be coming from a place really of deep concern that is shared by a number of other members of the African National Congress, of course, who are, in a different slate, who are saying whatever is happening, whether we like each other or not, the organization is falling apart or has fallen apart. And we are really kicking with the last leg here towards 2024. Let us regroup. Let us think differently, even under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa, especially because this leadership is taking a direction that has been challenged by South Africans for so many years, which is really neoliberal in nature, deepening the relationship with business, which is not a problem in itself, but the kind of a relationship that is being deepened continues not to analyze what kind of a business relationship are we having with the business sector. Is it conscious to the needs of the people of South Africa? Are we confident that if, for example, we give over 50% of state-owned enterprises and service delivery programs to the business sector, can we trust the business sector in South Africa today that they have the conscience of the people at heart? And I think the answer to that from many South Africans and some members of the ANC would be no. And that is the deepening worry, besides just the Phala Phala issue, besides everything else around corruption within the ANC. It is just the ideological strategic direction that the organization has moved away from since the Reconstruction and Development Program. And I think they've been dwindling since then and struggling to find a macroeconomic framework that would recover South Africa socio-economically, and that is what the battle is here.
It's interesting, Dr. Vilakazi, if indeed the call is for the ANC to regroup and the former president is, championing that call, it is curious that he would address this particular letter to the deputy president and not to the office of the Secretary General. We know that the office of the Secretary General is the heart and the engine of the African National Congress. It has a greater interface with branches across all levels. And so it's very curious that he would address the letter to the DP and not necessarily to the SG. How do you make sense of that decision that he made?
Well, there are two things there for me. One, I think it was just a knee-jerk reaction on his part, perhaps from a place of frustration, about the manner in which the Deputy President responded in Parliament at the National Assembly the other day, when Usiviwe Gahube the chief whip of the Democratic Alliance, was asking the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, questions, right? And the manner that he responded, just in terms of the role of the National Assembly, the constitutional role in particular, to hold the executive accountable in the context of Phala Phala. Because Ukwahobe was saying to the Deputy President, are you aware, I'm just summarizing this, are you aware that in the manner that you voted, you have actually undermined this constitutional mandate? What should we do as a Deputy President? And he said, the ANC has got majority, and the ANC has exercised its majority. Voters have voted there on the ground, and that's what we are going to do here. And he basically says we have won this battle of Phala Phala when people voted for us when they did as a majority, undermining, according to former President Thabo Mbeki, that constitutional mandate, and perhaps even abusing it. So that knee-jerk reaction may be coming from that place to say, I need to engage this person directly, right? Because over and above the fact that this is an ANC matter, it's also a Deputy President Paul Mashatile matter, and how he has responded. So he has to be held accountable for his words directly. So it could be a knee-jerk reaction on his part, but also then secondly, issues that many of us have been raising. It's a question of relationality within the ANC, collegiality, comradeship, and so on, that is no longer in existence. People are doing their own thing. People do what they like. They no longer really even adhere to their own constitution, just in terms of constitutional protocol when it comes to these issues. So we're not really surprised. I think there's a constitutional chaos and a constitutional crisis that we have all been alluding to, just in terms of how, in terms of the ways of working internally within the African National Congress. Everybody's just trying to pick up, all the balls that are falling apart. And again, it's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a reaction of frustration. It's a reaction of urgency that says that even if we are voting according to party line, I am going to stand up as an individual and do this, right? And he never would have written it to Cyril Ramaphosa, because the relationship is damaged. Fikile Mbalula has just come in on board, and people also have been saying that the Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, is aligned to President Cyril Ramaphosa and so on. But Fikile Mbalula also has been criticized for just supporting any president just to safeguard his own stomach. So those issues are at play. There are personality issues within the ANC, and I think former President Thabo Mbeki perhaps had to just be direct with the Deputy President Mashatile in this regard, but also noting those dynamics around relationships that are not functional within the ANC.
Yeah. Something else that
trust also, there was trust, because if you write to someone, how much do you trust that conversation will be conveyed in the manner that it is meant to be? Sorry to interject.
No, of course. Those relational aspects are key indeed. Something else that the former president touched on was just how long it's actually taking for South Africans to get answers on this Phala Phala matter, touching on the fact that it's been over 9 months since Arthur Fraser first revealed the contents, of course, of his claim and then following through, of course, with laying criminal charges. What do you say to the former president highlighting that timeline for South Africans? Well, of course, the letter itself was addressed to the DP, but it's since become public knowledge, almost as if he's bringing it back to the foreground, reminding South Africans of exactly how long it's taking for them to get answers on this issue. All the while the ANC, with its majority in Parliament, essentially blocks all attempts at independently investigating what exactly happened on that game farm.
Ntokozo and South Africans, what former President Thabo Mbeki is doing to us is to say that the ANC is repeating the mistakes of the past, right? In that timeline, he's not even just talking about the fact that it's taken 9 months to speak on Phala Phala as the ANC. He's also saying that we have done this with the Nkandla Gate when it comes to former President Jacob Zuma. We have abused our majority, and he is saying we are continuing again. We are not changing this trajectory. We are not learning from this, and we are continuing to hurt South Africans. We are continuing to put salt on the wound of the nation, in terms of their leadership in the country. And that is what he is doing, and he doesn't see the ANC to even applying its mind, critically so, on the implications of what is called Phala Phala Gate today, in relation to building the relationship with the masses of the people of South Africa. And I think it's deeply concerned, coming from the December National Elective Conference, which was a highly dwindling conference, I must say, just in terms of policy direction. For those of us who were there, you would have seen that just after voting, even delegates of the ANC were not there the following day. They went into different places. They had to postpone the conference. So anyway, coming back to the question, 55% even of members, of supporters of the African National Congress no longer believe what the ANC says. So it's troubled by those things to say 9 months again, we have not taken the country into confidence. Right. Talk less of the country. We have not taken even the supporters of the ANC, who are probably the remaining voters who are standing on the fence as we speak.
Right.
Towards 2024, who may change their mind to take a different direction during coalition voting. So take those voters at least into confidence to either maintain the 40%, otherwise you're dropping lower, you know. Right. And you would have seen, Togozo, the DA is capitalizing on that in its Congress. Recently, they can see the numbers are dropping probably to the 30s towards 2024, and their numbers are rising to the 20s in terms of votership. Chances are that there may be some kind of power there that is going on, and former President Thabo Mbeki should be troubled by that.
Right.
And he subjects himself to this conversation to say, I'm not immune to this, I've contributed to it, we have voted this way since Ngandla. Why is it that we continue to do that? Why is it that we are blinded by the manner in which we are abusing our majority at the National Assembly, which is the highest decision-making body of the country. This is a body that South Africans, all of us, it's what I would call in isiZulu, umsamo of the nation. This is a sacred place that we are trusting as South Africans to say our parliamentarians are going to really behave and vote in favor of the Constitution, but most of all, in favor of the needs of South Africans. And the ANC is a majority party. Has failed to do that. They are behaving, Dogozo, as if during 1994-1997, when the Constitutional Assembly was in place, as if they walked out of the door when the Constitution was written. They are behaving as if they were not part of writing this Constitution. They are defying every bit of it in the manner that they are behaving at the National Assembly. And I want to believe these are issues that are troubling former President Thabo Mbeki. Right, of course, with him being part of that process. And I'm hoping that the ANC can read into that in this way.
Right. Well, that is all the time that we have, unfortunately, for that conversation. But I want to thank you for coming onto our platform and sharing those insights with us. That's a political analyst, Dr. Fikile Vilakazi.